Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Recently, I made a response to a Christian that claimed that the Prophet ﷺ forgot, quoting the hadith found in Bukhari that the Prophet ﷺ said, prayed for someone for reminding him of such and such verse in such and such surah. So I said the Prophet ﷺ was a human as much as we are. So some Muslims, especially those that believe just in the Quran and not the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, said, how can I say the Prophet ﷺ forgot the Quran? How can I say something like that? But then we should understand that as Muslims, we are to work with both the Quran and the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. That whatever the Prophet ﷺ had brought forth, collect it, take it. And what he has asked you to shun, or to ignore, or to go away from, try to shun those things, or leave those things. A brother asked a question that I feel I should respond to, okay? And there are so many questions, but then these are questions from those that believe in just the Quran. I don't respond to such questions because we don't have the same philosophy, okay? They don't believe in the Quran, and this is seriously surprising because the people that preserved the Quran, Allah used to preserve the Quran, are the same people that narrated these hadiths from the Prophet ﷺ. So it's surprising that you take one and you left the other. But then that's a story for another day. So let's read the question of this brother. He said, Assalamu alaikum, please read the tafsir of Surah Baqarah verse 106 to proper understand what it means for the Prophet to forget a verse of the Quran. And it will be of immense benefit if you seek from the people of knowledge, okay, before making statements about the deen in order to remain on the right path. Thanks. I think the first part is the question, and thanks for the advice. Of course, I would stick with the scholars, and I'm not in any way, shape or form a scholar. Please don't ascribe any scholarship to me, okay? I'm only trying my best. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ballighu anni walau ayah." Convey from me even if it is an ayah. And I fully understand that you have to understand what you're conveying. You don't just read, then you go and you convey. So now this is the verse the brother wants me to look at, and maybe what he's drawing my attention to is the fact that if I say the Prophet ﷺ forgot, this is what it implies. Okay, let's look at the verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Baqarah, مَا نَنْسَخْ مِنْ آيَةٍ أَوْ نُنْسِهَا نَأْتِ بِخَيْرٍ مِنْهَا أَوْ مِثْلِهَا. That we do not abrogate a verse or cause it to be forgotten except to bring something that is better, or we bring something that is similar to it. Okay, meaning if I should say the Prophet ﷺ forgot a verse, then there has to be something that will replace what the Prophet ﷺ has forgotten. So, but what the brother is missing out here is the fact that the scholars have come to the conclusion that there are two types of forgetfulness. The first is when something is taken away or abrogated. Okay, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden for the Prophet ﷺ. And the second has to do with the human nature. Humans forget. It is only natural for someone to forget something. But that type of total forgetfulness, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected the Prophet from. And the Prophet ﷺ forgets and also remembers. So let's go to Surah Al-A'la and see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-A'la, سَنُكِرُكَ فَلَا تَنْسَى. And we would cause you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to recite it and not forget it, and you won't forget it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the next verse, إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ, except what Allah has willed. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam won't forget. And let's go to Surah Al-A'la and see what the companions have to say regarding this. Okay, let's begin from this. وَفِي رِوَايَةٍ Abi Salih and Ibn Abbas, so from the son of Abbas, فَلَمْ يَنْسَ بَعْدَ نُزُولِ هَذِهِ الْآيَةَ حَتَّى مَاتَ, that the Prophet ﷺ never forget after the revelation of this verse until he dies. إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ, except what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed. وعن سعيد عن قتادة, and from Sa'id from Qatada, قال, he said, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا ينسى, that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم never forgets شيئا, something, إلا ما شاء الله, except what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed. على هذه الأقوال, so upon this statement, Qila, it is said, Illa ma sha Allah, except what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed. An yansa, for him to forget, walakinnahu lam yansa, but he, the Prophet ﷺ, never forgets. Shay'an min, if he doesn't forget anything from it. Ba'da nuzuli hadhihi al-ayah, after the revelation of this ayah. Waqil, and also it is said, Illa ma sha Allahu an yansa, except what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed for him to forget. Thumma yadhkuru ba'da dhalik, and then he remembers afterwards. And this is exactly what we have been talking about. He remembers afterward. فَإِذَا قَدْ نَسِيَ, so then he had forgotten. وَلَكِنَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ, but then he also remembered. وَلَا يَنْسَى نِسْيَانًا كُلِّيًا, so he doesn't forget totally. Okay, for example, not remembering that there was an ayah like this. He forgets just the way we humans forget. Then he remembers. So I want us to look at the statement of Salih Al-Munajjid from Saudi when someone asked a similar question. So let's go. So this is Sheikh Munajjid site Islam Q&A. So someone asked a similar question and he gave this response. He said, the point is that forgetting is of two types. Forgetting in the sense of removal, abrogation and loss of the forgotten material altogether, which is what the Prophet ﷺ was protected from, so that he did not forget anything of the Quran except what Allah willed that he should cause him to forget of that which he wanted to remove and abrogate, which is what is referred to in the words interpretation of the meaning, we shall make you to recite the Quran, so you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, shall not forget it, except what Allah may will. This is what Ahl Sunnah are unanimously agreed did not happen to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it is unanimously agreed that this did not happen to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He did not forget not to remember again. So the second type, which is what he said here, the second type is the kind of forgetting that is part of human nature. This did happen to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on occasions, and this is what he referred to when he said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I am only human like you, I forget as you forget. If I forget, then remind me, narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. And he also said, may Allah have mercy on him, for he has reminded me of such and such a verse that I had been caused to forget in surah such and such. There's nothing problematic in this, because it did not affect the obligation to convey the message, so long as the verse or the thing that had been forgotten was preserved. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, would remember it soon afterwards, just exactly what we read earlier on the tafsir of Surah Al-A'la. So as long as he remembers soon afterwards, then there's nothing wrong with that. This is just his human nature. So at the end of the day, we realize that there are two types of forgetfulness. Okay, the one that the Prophet ﷺ would never happen to him, and the second, which is that which is part of human nature, for him to forget and also remember afterwards. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.